In 1749, the British colony of Georgia was on the brink of total annihilation, not from the Spanish Navy, and not from a French invasion, but from a single woman standing at the gates of Savannah. Most history books tell you that the colony of Georgia was built by General James Oglethorpe. They call him the founder, but they are missing the most dangerous, wealthy, and powerful person in all of Savannah, Georgia. A woman who owned entire islands, commanded a private army of warriors, and held the fate of the British Empire in her hands, Coosaponakeesa, but the British called her Mary Musgrove. To the British, she was an interpreter. To the Muscogee Creek nation, she was a high-ranking clan leader. But to history, she was the woman who held the British Empire's newest colony hostage for 20 years. She wasn't just a participant in Georgia's founding. She was the only reason it was allowed to exist. And when the British tried to betray her, she decided to show them exactly who was in charge. Most people think hostage means guns and ransom. For Mary Musgrove, it was an economic warfare. Before the first British brick was even laid in Savannah, Mary Musgrove controlled the deerskin trade, the literal backbone of the southern economy. Through her trading post, Mount Venture, she held a monopoly on the goods the British needed to survive and the export they needed to make a profit. The deerskin trade alone was generating hundreds of thousands of pounds for the British economy annually. And every single shipment moved through her post. But her real leverage was information. She was the only person who could guarantee the Creek Nation wouldn't wipe the tiny, starving colony off the map. She held the British in a diplomatic hostage situation. Pay me, respect my land, and I will keep the peace. Stop paying, and the frontier burns. And this wasn't an empty threat. The Creek Alliance had tens of thousands of warriors. Savannah in 1733 had fewer than 500 settlers. The math was not in Britain's favor. During the War of Jenkins Ear, the British were terrified of a Spanish invasion from Florida. They were desperate for intel, and Mary Musgrove was the only one who could provide it. She managed a massive network of Creek scouts, acting as a frontier spymaster. At one point, she withheld critical information about Spanish troops' movements for weeks, until the British cleared her back wages. She provided the British with critical troop movements, but she made sure they knew the intel only came through her. She was effectively holding the colony's security hostage. If she went silent, Savannah was blind. She used this fear to rack up massive service bills that the British Crown couldn't afford to pay, but couldn't afford to ignore either. By 1749, the British tried to break her grip. They refused to recognize her ownership of St. Catherine's, Sapelo, and Ossabaw Islands, the land she had been granted by the Creek Nation. They thought they could finally push the interpreter aside. This was a huge mistake. They were wrong. Mary Musgrove didn't hide. She gathered 200 Creek warriors and marched directly into the heart of Savannah. For days, the city was under a psychological siege. Mary Musgrove declared herself a Creek princess and an independent sovereign. She reminded the governor that her family controlled the land he was standing on. The British were so terrified they called out the entire militia, but they were paralyzed if they harmed her. They knew 2,000 more warriors were waiting just beyond the trees. The hostage situation only ended when the British finally blinked. After a decade of legal warfare that went all the way to the courts in London, the British Crown gave in. By 1760, they officially granted her St. Catherine's Island and a massive payout of 2,100 British pounds. A fortune in the 18th century. That's over £500,000 British pounds in today's money. Mary Musgrove didn't just survive the British Empire. She outmaneuvered it, outaimed it, and forced it to acknowledge her power on her own terms. History likes to remember helpers and translators. It's much more uncomfortable to remember a woman who knew her worth and was willing to bring a colony to its knees to get it. Mary Musgrove wasn't just a part of the story. She owned the book.